If you came of age during the 80s or early 90s, you'll remember Quantum Leap. It was a very popular, but not insanely popular, science fiction series where Scott Bakula essentially played what's known as a quantum leaper. Being very simplistic, he was able to do time travel within his own lifetime and was aided by this person from the future, Al, his friend. And the essential premise of the show is he was able to keep leaping into people's identities, taking over their bodies, even if they were a man or a woman or even a child sometimes. And he had to sort of correct something that they assumed went wrong within that person's lifetime for him to continue leaping and hopefully make it back home in the future. It ended controversially. I've seen the vast majority of the episodes, not every single one. I didn't see the last couple of episodes, but I have watched virtually every single episode and I mostly loved it. It's very well done, very funny, very quirky. A lot of interesting cameos and celebrities show up. For instance, there's this one episode, which is kind of a horror episode, where the young Stephen King shows up. They're able to sort of bend a lot of things by going to historical turning events, but having him involved in a weird way. So a lot of historical figures show up. People we don't know are historical figures until the basic twist at the end. So they're able to play with a lot of genres, the noir, horror, even mysticism, conspiracy thrillers. But it was also very odd in terms of its politics because it did a lot of liberal stuff. A main thing that Sam would often do is be a black man and have to confront discrimination, racism, and help against that. But it was also very conservative. For instance, in this one weird storyline, he's Lee Harvey Oswald, but instead of Oswald being the victim of a conspiracy, turns out he actually did kill Kennedy. So Sam can't stop the assassination, but he basically is able to save Jacqueline Kennedy. So we know for sure the communists killed Kennedy. So very weird mix of liberal and conservative politics. And the social commentary was very explicit. Really, that was pretty much almost every episode. I mean, one of them was like a spy episode, which was clearly very political, but it was also very funny because it had something to do with the U2 spy incident. And Sam is a little confused because Al is a hologram. So he's not talking to a person, he's talking to a hologram. He says, well, we got to fix the U2 thing. And Sam's confused, right? Because he's drawing upon his memory. So he's like, U2, the rock group? Is that what we're doing? Like, no, not the rock group. It's a spy thing. So it's a little bit all over the place in terms of comedy, politics, drama, romance. Like, Sam just had intense love affairs, romances, even though technically he's married. It became kind of a running joke that he'd always be falling in love in every episode and making love to all these beautiful women. It was a little bit silly. It's a lot of different aspects of the show. And again, the good news is some of the old people are back. Belisario, who helped create the original show, Scott Bakula is going to be rumored to be a part of it. He confirmed on the Bob Saget show, ironically, that yes, Quantum Leap was coming back, but they had to handle the right situation. But apparently that's finally been resolved. And the team looks good. They've done Gotham as well as some other projects, but I got to be honest, I didn't like Gotham that much. I thought it was a very mixed bag for me. It's not terrible, but I didn't like a lot of it. So they're also not the biggest writers. They're not the most famous writers. They're not the best writers. So they're not terrible, but they've got experience. Good points, bad points in terms of how this is going to happen. It's allegedly a continuation. This is not a reboot. They're not starting over. They're apparently going to go back to the original Quantum Leap project, but just go into it further. So it could be about finding Sam, could be about Al's children or Sam's children and them trying to get him back, whether it's his daughters or sons. The actual plot has not yet been revealed. So I'm very hopeful. It's a really great show, but to be honest, I mean, the thing worked because it was such a great, unique blending of Scott Bakula and Dean Stockwell, who tragically recently died. Their chemistry together, the premise, the time period, right? Them able to go back to different eras. It didn't cost that much. I mean, the special effects were very basic, but you don't need many special effects because, again, he just leaps into the person. He does a mission, then he leaps out. So, again, it just worked really, really well with the time period, with the premise, with the limitations of network television. But it's unclear if it still has its massive audience. It's definitely got a cult following. I love it. Many other people love it. Many people can recall it, but it doesn't have the name brand that some much bigger IPs do, like Spider-Man or X-Men, which were also turned into television series, or Buffy the Vampire Slayer, for instance. So it's unclear. It's good signs. I'm very hopeful. I do want to see it. Scott promises to be involved, so a lot of the old gangs coming back for it. but tragically not Dean. But again, this was a kind of lightning in the bottle. It's sort of like Star Trek: The Next Generation. The reason it worked is because the cast, the effects, creative team, and again, the time period really worked well. Can you really move it forward? This is the right creative team to do it. Again, a lot of unanswered questions, but very hopeful. It's a lot of great stuff to go through. Again, so many episodes seem to deal with so many issues that they're tapped out. But again, they did technically leave it open for a sixth season. So despite them going through so many different premises, so many different varieties, and so many stories of him going through all these individuals that he leaped into, there's still so many more he could have obviously done. So there's really no limit in terms of the imagination of like what he can leap into. Could he leap into now to an android? Could he leap into a robot? I mean, again, there's a lot of things he could play with and still maintain the fundamental premise of him just solving these problems within history and sometimes making these tragic trade-offs, because sometimes he didn't fix, quote, what you would think he have to fix. He has to fix something even bad, so he has to let some bad things happen sometimes. So really interesting back with the internal mythology. So a lot of good signs, but also signs to be nervous. But hopefully it's going to happen. They're definitely committed to the pilot. Hopefully the pilot will lead to a series. And even if this one doesn't work, again, this is not the only bite at the apple. Hopefully it'll keep coming back and they'll finally get it straight, because it's a very intriguing idea. And yes, would work really well, but it has to be done a certain way. And there we are with the continuation of Quantum Leap coming soon.